Hey guys, OperatorDrewski here, and today we're going to be looking at if ArmA 3 could run on a console like an Xbox One or a PS4. And to do this, to kind of understand if it could run, we'll have to actually build a PC, an imaginary computer that runs very, very similar to what an Xbox One or a PS4 runs at, and therefore we have to look at some games that are on Xbox One and how they perform. I'm picking the Xbox One in particular because the Xbox One is slightly weaker in power than the PS4. Let's say, for example, on Battlefield 4, the graphics unit in the Xbox One was not as powerful, therefore they lowered it down to 720p instead of the 900p that is on PS4. So I want to do it on the Xbox One because if ArmA could run on Xbox One, then it could run on a PS4. That's why I'm making that comparison. Now, it is very difficult to exactly pinpoint the exact power amount. Like, I can't get a PC part and say, okay, this mirrors exactly what the Xbox One runs at. Because, one, the processors and the graphics units in both the PS4 and the Xbox One are very different, very unique in their own way, and will never be used in a PC. But also, the games are optimized to that certain system. Let's say, DICE makes Battlefield Hardline. They're going to optimize the game exactly to what the Xbox One works with. They're going to optimize it to exactly use, the perfect amount of cores that the Xbox One can use so that it can run as well as it can. So games will be a lot faster on a console than a PC, even if the console is the same exact hardware as the PC hardware. That is just because the game is designed for that machine. It is designed to work with its processor, with its graphics card. The developers don't really have to work hard when they're optimizing for a console because it's only one machine, and right now there's only two main consoles that are, that games are being released on, that AAA titles are being released on. So you really don't have to work hard. You're seriously optimizing for just one system and then another system. For PCs, on the other hand, you have to optimize for millions of different combinations of systems. Systems that are potatoes, systems that are super high-end PCs. You have to seriously make everyone in the entire earth who has a computer able to play your game smoothly. And that's really tough, and it honestly can't happen. So that is why games are optimized more on Xbox One and PS4 because they'll just run better on the same hardware. That's why I'm kind of giving it a benefit of the doubt. When I'm comparing these pieces of parts, the parts might actually be slightly more powerful than the Xbox One or the PS4, but that is because I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt that the games on Xbox One or PS4 are optimized better. So let's say if ArmA was put onto an Xbox One, even though a PC might be running ArmA at 30 frames per second on a PC. If we put those parts into a console and the developers knew exactly what the console specs were, so they optimized for those same parts, then the console variant would run better. So taking that into effect, I tried to compare pieces of PC parts that are close or similar, or just trying to be as near powered as the Xbox One parts as I could get. And what I ended up with was an AMD FX 4350. Now, the Xbox One's Jaguar CPU is an 8-core, 6 are dedicated to gaming, the other 2 are dedicated to the operating system. And so I wanted to get something that had a lot of cores. So I looked at like the 8350, but I was like, no, that's way too powerful. Looked at the 6300, which is a 6-core processor, still was way too powerful in single-core performance and all that. And note that the 8-core processor that's in the Xbox One runs at like 1.75 gigahertz. So it's very slow actually in gigahertz, but it's actually very optimized in different parts of it, and therefore it can run really, really well for what a lower-end processor it is. So what I found out is that, okay, let's just look at Battlefield 4. How does Battlefield 4 run on Xbox One? That is the most CPU-intensive game I could really think of to run on Xbox One. And I said, okay, it's not really going to be easy to tell how well the processor actually runs that game, but I can get a kind of iffiness. I can kind of understand how it runs. And I kind of figured out, okay, it's somewhere in between an FX 6300 with 6 cores and an FX 4350. I don't really know i5s or i7s that much. I don't really know those as much, so I was picking AMD processors for this, as well as the cores just matched up a little bit more. You don't really find a lot of 6-core Intel processors or anything like that. So I tried to find something with a lot of cores, but this just ended up being a quad core, but this is as close as I could get. Now we look at the GTX 750 Ti, and that is what I think is equal to the Xbox One's capabilities. If you can run Battlefield 4 at 720p on medium-high settings, then you probably are playing with a 750 Ti. Now that is with 720p, if I didn't mention that before. And so you're probably playing on a 750 Ti. So the computer I built that kind of mirrors the Xbox One is the FX 4350, a GTX 750 Ti, some 8 gigs of RAM, a decent, 500 gigabyte hard drive, and a decent motherboard, and you honestly have a PC that is very similar to an Xbox One. So, now that we have this PC in mind, now that we have this PC that is very similar to what an Xbox One would perform at, because I've played on PCs that had both of this processor and this graphics card, and I know that they can handle something like Battlefield 4, 720p, 60 FPS, with some fluctuations every now and then, because honestly, on the Xbox One, it does fluctuate, same as PS4. Even though PS4 is more powerful, but PS4 runs at 900p, Xbox One runs at 720p. So, now that we have this PC, would this PC run ArmA well? Now, we look at the processor. The processor, compared to something that I would recommend for playing ArmA, like a 4790K, isn't really going to cut it. It is a lower-end processor, much lower-end than a 4790K or a 4770K or a 3770 at that. You really want a good i7 with 4 cores that are really high clock speed, and you really want just a lot of power to be going through that processor, and that's the main part. The CPU is very important for ArmA 3 gameplay. The CPU in this case would not be effective. I looked at the comparisons. I have used that CPU before, and I can confidently say that the CPU would not be enough to play ArmA effectively. But a GTX 750 Ti is definitely effective. Now, what I'm saying effectively is that you couldn't play all game modes. You couldn't play, 64-player Invade and Annex, or just gigantic game modes with tons of AIs, because the game is just unoptimized for single-core use. It's not really great for really trying to help out those guys with lower-end processors. And for something like ArmA, you really need something that has a powerful processor, something that's more powerful than this. Honestly, minimum thing I would recommend is like a 6300, and this is a 4350. This has 4 cores, that has 6. It's a lot faster, single core and single thread speed. A lot better processor in a nutshell, but this would not be able to cut it. But the graphics card would be able to. ArmA 3 doesn't really require much power from the graphics card. My friends, I actually have a few friends, like Magnus, for example, runs with a 660. Stralza plays with a 750 Ti. They run ArmA 3 fine. Yes, they do have times when they are lagging like crazy, but also everybody else with their, dual 980 Ti's are going to be lagging like crazy as well, because it's ArmA. When some person is lagging, pretty much everybody's lagging. So, yes, it could run, but it would have to be cut back in the CPU usage by a lot. You could do this in many ways. One, I thought, okay, take away Altus. Maybe simplify the maps. Maybe use maps from older games like Chernarus or Serrani, or, I don't know, any of the older maps from like Combat Operations or something, or whatever that one, really, ArmA 1 was. Use the maps that are simpler and have less buildings, less clutter, because those take up a lot of CPU usage, as well as have smaller maps. So like something like Stratus would work perfectly fine. I suggested Serrani because Serrani is a very open and big map, but it doesn't have many objects that are really CPU heavy, so you can fly around with a great view distance and you can still play at 60 FPS. So, making the map simpler would work. But another thing would be taking AI out in a whole. Taking AI out of ArmA 3, putting in some game modes that are primarily PvP, making it where people can have milsim operations but have it a lot smaller of a scale. People would still buy an ArmA 3 mini or ArmA 3 Lite type of game for a console if they could get their hands on it, because there's a lot of people that play consoles that are looking into milsim gaming, but they just can't get into it because they don't have a PC. They're kids that are younger, they got a console, and then they're like, oh wait, I just got this Xbox One and now I'm interested in milsim operations and I can't play. Well, that's just because there's no military simulators on Xbox One or PS4 at the moment. And so that's why I'm saying, a lot of people would actually want this. It wouldn't be a bad thing to take out a few things, make it a light version, make it like $30, and sell this to a console public. And another thing is that, why I brought this up as well, is that a lot of people were asking me about this. A lot of people were asking, why isn't ArmA on consoles? And that's the same thing I'm going to answer right now, is that why isn't DayZ on consoles? Well, DayZ, at its current state, it's in 0.59 at the moment. It's about to be 0.6. I don't know if even 0.6 would run on console right now. But if you're running a i7-4770K with a GTX 970 and you've got 8 gigabytes of like 1866 megahertz RAM, and then you got an SSD, you've got a pretty PV PC, I would think. And then I hop into DayZ standalone and I'm getting like 15 frames in Cherno, and I'm sitting there like, they expect this to be on an Xbox One or a PS4. I think they were saying PS4. It's not going to happen, no. That game cannot in its current state run on PS4. It has to be simplified a lot to be running on PS4. A lot of people are asking for this though. Like, a lot of people would actually really want this, and that's why I'm kind of making this video, because maybe get some publicity of like, hey, people on consoles want this type of game. When I was a console peasant, I really wanted ArmA 3. I really wanted ArmA 2. I really actually wanted to play DayZ a lot, but I just couldn't because I had no PC. I had a HP Pavilion with a HD 7770 in it, and that's all I had. And so yeah, that's what I thought. I think that ArmA could run on a console. In my final verdict, I think it could run on a console, but it would definitely have to be pulled back a lot in terms of features, in terms of like AI limits or something. Maybe what Halo does with their Forge mode, which is very customizable. It's very similar to what ArmA can do. You know, you can create your own game modes and stuff. Have it where you can set a limit, a CPU usage limit, to where if you have too many AIs running at once in a single game, it limits you from having too many AIs. On computer, you can seriously have like 1,000 AIs. You will lag your game out, but you won't be able to have that acceptable on consoles. People don't know about lag when they're new console players, when they're getting into video games. And so when they discover lag, they're going to be like, oh, this is a terrible game. I hate this now that I've placed 1,000 AI and they're lagging my game. You would have to limit it in some way so that people wouldn't just crash their Xboxes every 5 seconds. So having something like an object limit, where in Zeus or something you couldn't place too many objects, or in a 3D editor you couldn't place too many objects, having something that could simplify it would work. Additionally, you would really have to simplify the entire control system. I would honestly get rid of the entire like AI control system in a whole and just make a new one if I was porting it to consoles. And it would be pretty simple. It's just some HUD and different controls and stuff to make a more effective menu for a controller to use. Again, it would have to be a much simplified version. You'd probably see more simple combat with less, I guess, less CPU hoarding AIs that are running around, and overall, just the map system, the entire gameplay would have to be a lot simpler, but people would still enjoy it if it was simpler, if it was a simpler version of ArmA 3, ArmA 3 Lite, for example. So yeah, that's what I wanted to discuss today. A few people were asking me that question. If you would, I kind of want to start a series where actually people can ask me questions and I can answer them and make a video about it like this, where I kind of hypothesize about it. It's really cool, not even speculation, it's just cool hypothesis where I can talk about this, really study it for a good few hours, and then come out with my verdict for you guys. So if you guys want any more questions, or want to ask any more questions, please leave it in the comment section down below. I might start like a series out of answering questions like this, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Oh, hello, Blake!
You made it!
No, this can't happen. No!
Yeah, get him, buddy!
Contact, man! What are you?
Oh my god! Look down! Oh god!